Thank you. My name is Vadim Vladimirsky, and I'm the CEO of Nerdio. Thank you all very much for joining me today to learn about how to create Azure offers and packages. As some or all of you may be familiar, Nerdio is an Azure automation solution, and our mission is really to empower MSPs to build and grow successful cloud practices in Microsoft Azure. And being able to sell and package Azure is really an important topic that we work quite a bit with our MSP partners on and help them do that. So let's dive right into the content here. So I'd like to point out that we have a very comprehensive guide that we've created on how to create Azure offers and packages. I'm obviously going to cover only some of the high-level topics in our 20-minute session today with Q&A to follow, but this is available on our website in the Nerdio Academy at getnerdio.com/academy. I think it's also linked to this session, and we'll be sure to share it with you. And it gets into really much more detail and a step-by-step approach on how to do this. So for the call to for the presentation today, I'd like to go over the reasons why an MSP would want to create offers on top of Azure and what I mean by offers and packages. We'll walk through just an example of one such particular offer development process, and then I'll spend a couple of minutes showing you some of the technologies available in the Nerdio for Azure product that can help you visualize and present Nerdio or Azure-based packages with the Nerdio for Azure product. So to start with, why is it that an MSP would want to create an Azure offer or an Azure package as opposed to selling Azure kind of a la carte or piecemeal or, just sort of reselling the Azure components as they are presented by Microsoft? And the reason for that is that the MSP's responsibility and the opportunity is really to simplify what is an otherwise a pretty complex system and environment and kind of an IT platform. Azure is very big and vast with many hundreds, if not thousands, of products that make it up. And the MSP's opportunity is to take all of that complexity and be able to take on that complexity and be able to capture value in helping their customers adopt technologies that are Azure-based without having to learn all the nuances of Azure. And the way we do that is we try to make it simple. And there's a handful of things we got to do to make it simple. Number one is we have to make it easy for a customer to select and purchase Azure-based solutions. So if you think about, buying Azure as it is right now, having to go into, let's say, the Azure calculator and trying to understand, how things are priced and how much they will cost, as compared to buying something like Office 365, which is a very highly packaged offer, right? People go to the Office 365 page. There is a table or a chart that lays out 3 different solutions side by side, the 3 different packages. You may have your E1, E3, and E5, and it's really easy to understand what it is you're buying, how much you're buying it for, etc. It just makes the buying process and the selection process much simpler for the customer, removing a lot of the friction that typically happens in a complex sale like Azure. The second component that an MSP needs to focus on is making it easy to use. So, giving the customer a login to their Azure portal in most cases is going to overwhelm most customers. They won't really know what to do with it or how to use the various Azure components. And then finally, the ability to pay for an offer or a product that's based on Azure needs to be simple as well. The way Azure is out of the box, it's a consumption-based model. It's difficult to predict what it's going to cost. You only know what it is after you've sort of consumed the resources, and customers really have a hard time being able to budget for and really wrap their mind around this consumption type of offer where they don't really know every technical nuance of what goes into each individual component. So it's really important to make it easy for customers to select and purchase, easy for them to use, and then easy for them to budget for and pay for the product itself. The other component we always tell partners is don't sell Azure as a technology. Customers don't really care, how powerful and great and robust Azure is. What they want is they want something that will solve a specific business problem in their organization. So when you're thinking about creating an offer or a package on top of Azure, think about addressing a very specific, easy to articulate and easy to define business problem. Some examples could be, you may have a customer that's looking to create a backup solution to the cloud, and you may want to leverage something like Azure Backup to create an offer that will provide them with that capability. And the business problem you're solving is, backup in DR, and you're using Azure to deliver that technical kind of service delivery component. You may have a customer that wants to do virtual desktops because they want to enable work from home, or they want to enable remote users from the road to be able to access a line of business applications. That is a specific business problem, a specific user use case that you can use Azure to enable. So it's really important to think about what is the specific problem and then work on creating all of the technological pieces that fit together in order to solve that problem. So let's dig into that in a little bit more specifically with an example. So let's go through the process of defining an offer, selecting how many plans there are, and actually pricing them out and building out what an offer would be. So in our example, we're going to build an offer that we're going to say is going to be a complete Windows virtual desktop-centric Azure-based IT environment that includes all hardware, software, support, and managed services for our customers. So we're basically defining what we like to call IT as a service, which is an all-in IT offering that includes everything that an end customer may need in order to run their business, and it's all powered by the Azure environment. Now, one obvious question is, how many plans should there be? And the best practice we see is generally between 2 and 4, maybe 2 and 5 plans. If you go anything less than 2, then you're really not giving customers sufficient amount of choice. If you go to 5 or more, you're generally creating too many options with very little difference between them, which is going to lead to confusion and make it difficult or more difficult for customers to select from and decide which is the right option for them. So typically going with a good, better, best, or a gold, silver, or silver, gold, platinum type of an approach with kind of 2 to 4 options is generally what we've seen work best. Then you need to decide on how you're going to price each one of these plans. So again, in this case, we're talking about the complete IT as a service offering that's inclusive of hardware, software, and managed services. And we are going to decide we're going to have 3 plans. We're going to call one professional, performance, and enterprise. And we are going to price them at 125, 175, and 50 per user per month. Sounds like I'm getting a little bit of an echo from someone. Okay, sounds like that went away. Thank you for muting. So that's what we're going to proceed with. So let's go through just a very detailed sort of an example, but we're not going to really focus on the specifics of it. I just want to show you what the process is, and then you can refer to our packaging guide that's going to give you more specific steps on how to do this. So as we are developing this IT as a service offer, which is a complete IT system with desktop virtualization at the core, what are the different pieces of that offering? So there is the desktop piece, there is a server infrastructure for things like domain controllers, file servers, application servers, databases. There is licensed software, things like Office 365 or Microsoft 365. There is security software. There is management tools like your RMM, and then there is ultimately services like help desk and virtual CIO. So, then you define, okay, well, what are the units or the possible dimensions of each one? So the desktop you may be looking at desktops in terms of how much RAM each user gets or how much local storage they have. Similar kind of things for servers, how much RAM, how much server storage, how many days of backup retention, how many VPN tunnels, etc. And then we start building out our 3 different plans, and we start plugging in values that we feel would make sense for a certain population of customers. So when we talk about our lower end plan, which is our professional plan, in this particular example, we may be talking about the very basic customer that has very basic needs. They may have, price sensitivity that they want to stay within a certain small budget. So we're really trying to design an offer for a customer that is very basic. Then we do the same thing for performance. This may be kind of our most popular plan, or the one we want to drive everyone towards. This is what we suspect most of our customers will benefit from. And then we can have our high-end plan, which may fit certain group of customers that are going to be our high-end customers that are not price sensitive, that are willing to pay a lot more, and get some additional bells and whistles. And generally, the rule of thumb is that you want the majority of your customers, let's say 60 to 80%, to converge on your mid-tier plan. So you're still giving them the options and the flexibility to go with something on the low end. You're giving the high-end customers the flexibility to go with something on the high end. But ultimately, you're really looking for everyone to end up in your mid-tier plan, which is the one that should apply to the vast majority, or at least the majority of your customer base. And then you start doing some numbers, right? You're plugging in how much the cost of each element becomes, how much the list price of each element is, right? And this is somewhat of a detailed and nuanced process. You just open a spreadsheet and you kind of build this out, and you use the Azure calculator or the Nerdio cost estimator to find out what all these different costs are. And then ultimately, as you build out your cost and list price columns, you can then calculate your margin on a per line item basis. But ultimately, what you're looking for is you're looking for an all-inclusive price that you've already sort of decided on, at least at a high level. You've decided that you're going to charge 125, 175, and 250. You're then going to add up your costs for delivering this tier of service and make sure that you're getting a gross margin that makes sense for your practice, right? We generally see a comprehensive offer like a virtual desktop environment or IT as a service environment be somewhere in the 40 to 60% gross margin. Certain things may be higher, certain things may be lower. If you're obviously putting together a very plain offer around software as a service like Office 365, you're likely going to see much, much lower margins. But if you have the opportunity to bundle more things together, especially including your managed services, then you will see the gross margin number start going up pretty dramatically. And depending on the pricing and the cost structure you have, obviously, the gross margin could be very high and very attractive at these price levels. So this is the high level process of developing, this offer. And what I'd like to show you next is, now once you've developed the offer, you know what your tiers are, you know what your prices are, and what are your components are. How do you put it all together in a way that you can publish it on your website and you can present it to your customer in an easy to select from way? So there is a feature in the Nerdio for Azure product called the Plans Designer. And what I'd like to spend the last few minutes is just to show you, what it looks like, where to find it, and how to customize it. So let me switch over to my demo environment here. I'm logged in as a MSP partner account into my Nerdio demo environment. And if I go under settings, you will notice there's a feature called the Plans Designer. If you go to the Plans Designer, you will notice a kind of a big screen with lots of different sections that are split into rows and columns. And this is just a kind of a template for you to start working with. And here you can define different categories of plans and products you may be offering. So again, this is just an out-of-the-box template, nothing more. This is not a recommended way to package things. It's just to illustrate how things work and make it easier for you to adapt it for your needs. So for example, we can have a section called Managed Virtual Desktop that's going to have 3 subplans, Silver, Gold, and Platinum. And you can click on each one of these items and you can edit them, edit the names, check or uncheck them to actually add them to the list or not add them to the list. And then each of these plans will have features that are listed on a row, and each feature will have a top line name, along with a subtext that's going to be appearing in smaller text. There's going to be either a checkbox to illustrate that that's included as part of the package, or an additional text that you can list next to that feature. And that's how you can compare and contrast different plans to each other on the dimension of each feature that they may have. And then ultimately, there is a price at the bottom that you list. And then you can add new features, you can move features around, you can remove features. There's all kinds of flexibility that you have in configuring each of these sections. There's then something similar for Office 365. There's something similar for Azure infrastructure. You can add a section for help desk and support. And you can see here, you can hide the various sections, and you can add additional add-ons and services. But the goal of this is a way for you to create a pricing page. So imagine kind of an Office 365 or QuickBooks Online page that shows you the various things you offer to customers, and be able to publish it under a unique URL on your own website with your own branding. So what you can do if you scroll to the bottom of this list is you can provide your own, title and intro text. You can provide your own call to action button that will allow you to capture that user's information. You can provide your own image and any sort of text that you may need. And then what you can do is you can publish this particular web page, which is going to end up at this URL that's listed right here. And if we click on the preview, you will see what all of these kind of configurable settings look like on your website. So imagine this is a sub-page of your website with your navigation menu at the top. It's got the 4 buttons at the top. There is a manage desktop section, and here are our 3 types of managed desktops. Then there is an Office 365 section, and maybe these are the Office 365 packages that we offer. There is an Azure infrastructure section, and maybe you're offering Azure infrastructure in a certain package with certain functionality. And if you want to offer it a la carte, there's even an option to ask someone to click on estimate price, and they will be able to kind of run their own quick estimate using the Nerdio cost estimator tool. You can have help desk and support plans. You can have additional services, etc. Again, this is just an example. A typical pricing page may not have 5 elements. It may have 2 or 3 elements, each one with 2 to 4 options within each of these different categories. So this is the tool called Plans Designer that's very flexible, that you can use in the Nerdio for Azure product. You can then take this URL, publish it to your website, and when people click on pricing on your website, you can have something that looks like this that you can very easily modify with a call to action button on the bottom. Let's actually enable a call to action button, say yes, and click preview, and we should have a start your trial today or contact us today or whatever may be the appropriate call to action for your particular environment. So with that, just to summarize what we've reviewed so far, let me flip over to deck here. So what we've reviewed so far are the reasons that you would want to create Azure offers and packages. It's really all about making Azure usage simpler for customers, creating solutions to specific business problems as opposed to selling it as a technology, making it easier to select from, use, and transact and pay for. We went through an example of what building out an IT as a service offer may look like. We also went through the process of calculating the costs and the margins based on the options that you've selected for your offer that you're building. And then finally, we reviewed the Plans Designer feature of the Nerdio for Azure tool that helps you put all of that information into a visualized format that lets you present it to customers on your website and make the selection process and the buying process easier. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor for any questions that there may be, and I'd be more than happy to try and answer them. All right, let's see.
I'm looking in the chat box, so for the moment there are no questions, but feel free to unmute yourselves and ask your questions.
Okay, well, I did either a really good job or a really bad job. So I guess there are no questions.
There is actually one.
Okay, excellent.
So how this will help in the startup company?
Just to clarify, would the startup be an MSP, right? An MSP that's sort of launching and trying to help customers take advantage of technology and cloud services? Would that be the type of startup company? Or are we talking about the end customer being a startup company? If you could just clarify, because I think those are two probably distinct answers.
Kumar, maybe you can clarify.
So let me answer both. For a startup company being the customer, certainly there is a very compelling use case for the cloud, not wanting to buy equipment and do things in the new cloud first type of way. So using Azure as the cloud platform for a startup company is definitely a very natural choice and one we typically see. If you're talking about the startup company being the MSP, I think one of the very important things for MSPs when they start out, generally it's in response to someone or someone you work with who needs your services, and you're basically doing things for them as they're sort of asking you for those things. But as you think about building out your MSP practice, you got to think about, well, what is it I'm going to specialize in? What am I going to be good at? How am I going to go to market and really scale the business? And in order to scale the business, productizing, packaging, defining offers is very important, because without it, it's impossible to differentiate between what you do in your MSP startup versus what some other MSP does, because everyone uses the same technologies provided by Microsoft, but everyone needs to specialize and really take the time to define what it is they want to be best in the world at, so they can have a compelling case for their customers. The next question I see here from Scott is if there is a trial version of Nerdio and what is offering features and duration. Yes, there's absolutely a trial version of Nerdio. If you go to getnerdio.com and click on the free trial, you get a 30-day free trial. If needed, we'll be happy to extend it for you. It's fully functional. You can have access to the tool that I showed you, which is just one of many, many different capabilities that Nerdio provides. So yes, absolutely, there's a trial, and we will be very happy to work with you and help you, build your Azure practice with the Nerdio for Azure tools. Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Scott. Okay. All right. I appreciate everyone. One second. Okay, we got a personal question of why I started it. I guess we have a couple of minutes. I'm happy to answer if we do have the time.
Yeah, we still have 3 minutes.
No problem. I will. I'll answer that quickly. So my background, I actually founded an MSP back in. Well, I worked for an MSP starting in the late '90s and started an MSP in 2005 and built that up based on the type of packaging and offer development and services that I am describing here. I built that MSP for about 10 years. It became very successful. And in the process of building the MSP, we created a lot of technology that helped us in the MSP practice be very efficient and effective in putting customers in the cloud. And that's how Nerdio was born about 4.5 years ago, with the premise of helping others be able to accomplish what we did with the MSP by putting customers in the cloud before cloud was really a thing It wasn't very something that people knew about or knew how to take advantage of in the mid 2000s and late 2000s, and only recently did it become kind of a mainstream thing. So that's how Nerdio came about. We just created a technology platform to help other MSPs go through the process of building a cloud practice within their own environment. Okay, one more question from Roberto. I have a couple minutes here left. So what's the difference between the managed virtual desktop and the Azure infrastructure in the Plans Designer? It's a great question there. I mean, it was just as an example. I'll explain what that means in the context of that particular example. But that's not necessarily how you would package things. So, you know, there is the virtual desktop and the Azure infrastructure piece. The managed virtual desktop is all of the licensing and managed services associated with delivering a desktop, which allows you to price it on a per user per month basis, because all of these costs kind of vary with the number of desktop or users. Whereas Azure infrastructure is more of the consumption-based infrastructure piece. Now, what we typically recommend is you take these two categories, the desktop and the infrastructure, and you blend them together, and you provide a predictable per user per month price, and you don't make your customers think about the infrastructure piece, because that's generally not something they want to be doing. And you as the MSP take on that complexity and obviously monetize that with your customers, because you're now taking responsibility for the infrastructure costs. Hopefully that answers the question, Roberto, and thanks everyone for your feedback. Been great to be here.
Thank you, Vadim. It was a great session, great demo, and a lot of useful information. So thank you again for all the 4 episodes, as well as thank you everyone for joining. This recording will be available on the Microsoft Partner Community on the event post. I will drop a link here in the chat once the recording is available. Thank you all and have a great day ahead.